Men have to be very careful because there's a spiral that pressure can bring about a self-destructive downward spiral. I call it the abyss. Once you're in it, if you don't realize that it's gotten a hold of you, you are immediately dragged down.
Is that depression that you're saying, or what do you mean?
I don't, well, for the general public, you can use that word. I despise that word. I also despise that 5-letter word, stress. I try to eliminate those words from my vocabulary because I don't want to give anything place.
Yeah.
That I've watched people do that downward spiral.
Yeah.
That looked at the abyss, fell into the abyss, couldn't come out, and are gone.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Who couldn't see that darkness.
Yes. Say that again. They couldn't see the darkness.
They couldn't see the darkness.
You mean at first? Do you mean at first? Or you mean at all? Like by the time they saw it, it was too late.
By the time they knew it was dark,
it was too late.
They were nothing but a shell.
Hey everyone, let's start healing. I'm Adrienne Murchison, and welcome to episode 90 of the Let's Start Healing podcast. We have more in common than we think, and what we have in common can change the world. There are some important points I want to make with this episode. It's something that means a lot to me that we're discussing, and there's just a lot of things I want to bring up. We're in a different time right now, in my view. I've had a lot of deaths in my family over the last 20 years, and over the last year, it's been numerous. And I have come to see just through social media and friends and followers on social media that so many of us are losing so many friends and family. And this is a different time. I find myself thinking about 2016, and if you remember, we lost a lot of celebrities during that year, and we were like, what the heck is going on? And I wrote down some of the names. I mean, it's way too many names to list. Way too many names. But some notable names that we lost was Muhammad Ali, Prince, Patty Duke, Alan Thicke, Nancy Reagan, Sharon Jones, Craig Sager, Gwen Ifill, Florence Henderson, Fidel Castro, the actor Bill Nunn. Those are just some of the names. I mean, you can just Google and you'll just see all the names month by month by month. And there was something going on. I don't know what it was, but it was unusual. And that's what I feel about the time they were in. Yes, we are hopefully at the end of a pandemic. I don't know. I haven't heard the words, we are out of the pandemic, or I haven't heard the word post-pandemic times, but we're hopefully on the tail end. And the passings that we're seeing are very different from the passings that we were seeing as a result of COVID. I don't know what it is. One of my family members says people just want to check out of here. They're just going. And one of my concerns have been Black men in their 60s. And I bring this up mindful that men of all different races and cultures are passing away, and men of all different ages are passing away, and men and women and children are passing away. And this will come up during my conversation with my guest. One of my concerns around Black men has been, I should say one of my hurts, or one of the things that pulls on my heart, has been Black men dying too soon. And this has been something that has been on my heart for years and years and years. I'll mention in the podcast, my father died at a young age. My brothers died too young. My oldest brother died earlier this year. And I think after my dad died, because he had a heart attack, and it was a sudden, massive heart attack. I've always been mindful of men and how they take care of themselves and what they eat and whether or not they exercise. And there's just so many sudden passings. One thing that really struck me was the passing of someone that I didn't even know. He was a friend of a friend on Facebook. And when I saw my friend post about this person's passing, I went to that person's page. And about a week and a half or a little more before he passed, it was that person's birthday. And he was saying, that he was so grateful, in these times to be alive. And he just had a lot of gratitude for life. And I don't know him. From what I saw, I honestly don't know. He just looked like a healthy person. And it just seemed like he just passed out of nowhere. I'm not even going to go through all the people that I know of who have passed away recently. And it just, it hurts. It makes me feel sad. I see some men that I know struggling, and I wanted to talk to a close friend of mine who is in his early 60s about it and get his take on men as he talks about men and what they feel when they're getting older. And he compares that to being younger and having a son and a young adult son and a grandson. He does not just stay in the lane of Black men. He talks about men in general and what men feel. And I want to point that out because I want to show you this book that I wrote in the 1990s. And it is a book, Colliding on the Road to Happiness. And it is a book a nonfiction book, where I interviewed Black men and women about relationships. Well, I self-published this book. And in getting funding, I went to my job and my coworkers at the time. I was living in New York City. I was working at the now defunct Bear Stearns. And I had a little presentation that my friends and coworkers could look at. And I passed it around and I told them what my passion was around the book. And I asked them for donations to help publish the book. I was also working part-time at Morton Steakhouse of Chicago, and I had a little fundraiser there as well. And my point is that the people who helped to fund this book were Black and white. Quite a few, more than a few, many of my friends who are white helped to fund this book. And one of the things that really struck me and was a learning experience for me was when my friends, my coworkers who were white who read the book, they came back to me and they said, wow, this is more than one person. And they came back and said, wow, the things that Black men and women experience are the same things that we experience. That's what they were saying to me. After we get past the struggles and the obstacles around race, we are all really dealing with the same thing. And, that really goes to what I like to say with this podcast. We have more in common than we think. And what we have in common can change the world. So my guest today is Wes Patillo. He is practically a lifelong friend. We've been friends since I was 15. His sister and I have been friends since I was 15. We are family. We're friends, but we are family. And I actually met them through my best friend, Tanya, who's been on this podcast. And so Wes is somebody that I just know really well. He knows me really well. He's been married he'll share for 36 years. He's been with his wife for 41 years. But Wes, just seeing him come through his life and him talk about just personal things that he's been through, I wanted to get his take on what men might be experiencing as they get older. So we get into it. We get into struggles of Black men, struggles of men, period. Sex, and the vitality that you feel or you don't feel as you're getting older. We get into a lot. Wes is a stream of consciousness kind of guy, and I think that you'll find it really interesting. He is just one of the most beautiful, beloved people that I've ever met, and I hope this is the first of many appearances on Let's Start Healing, because he's deep. And if he chooses to, there's just so much that he could share that would be so valuable. The only other thing I want to add is just that what I'm trying to get at in this podcast episode, it really speaks to just an awareness that I have of how this life that we're living is really so much shorter than we think, and that it's really important that we look inside and be mindful of the kind of human that we want to be and what this all means. I mean, it could be over in an instant, as we've seen, and then we're on to the next phase, the next form. And we want to be in the right position for that form, because I know me, my friends will tell you that I'm not trying to go backwards. I am not going backwards. I'm not coming back here to do this all over again. I want to be with the Lord. I want to be with the Lord, and I want to be with all of my loved ones who have passed on. And don't get it twisted. I am not talking about the alternative being hell. That's not something I believe in, but don't tell anybody. So anyway, I want you to meet Wes. I really, really hope that you enjoy this episode and this conversation. I would love if you tell me what you think about it and you chime in with your thoughts. You can follow me on social media. I have 2 Instagram accounts, Let's Start Healing Podcast, and also Adrienne Marie 19 on Instagram. And also you can find me on Twitter under that same name, and on Facebook. On Facebook, just come to me under my name, Adrienne Murchison. Okay, so let's get started. Let's meet Wes, and let's start healing. Welcome, Wes.
Hello, good afternoon, Adrienne. Nice as always to talk to you.
You too, and this should be good.
Been a long time coming.
Yep. You had brought up something when I was talking on the phone with you yesterday, and you were talking about your grandson and the importance of saying hello. And it had me thinking about a recurring knowing that I have. I want to say a revelation, but it's not the first time I've thought this, but it really sunk in yesterday about how it's not really, I think, about our words. I think it's about our energy. And so, it's the energy that comes from those words. And the reason I thought about it was because I was watching this matchmaking show, dating show, Ready to Love. And the women were annoyed about a guy who kept talking about himself. And I was like, well, in essence, is he really saying anything wrong? But then I realized that it's the energy, that he's bringing when he does that, the energy of, I don't care about you, I care about me, and just bringing it down. So it's the energy. Everything is energy to me. How would you describe your personal knowing and your personal perception of God?
I'll tell the story this way. Through a conversation I had with my grandson the other day. He's 10 and in 5th grade. And, knowing, after raising a son and knowing young men, you hit the age of 10, things begin to change. You view things differently. And I told him, I said, look, it's important that you embrace this time, because you're going to change. You'll never get this time of innocence or this time of wonder and amazement. You won't get it back. You're old enough to know the difference between right or wrong. You're old enough to know that you have to be deliberate about your presence and your greeting to people. And I quickly found that he not only prompted me to delve into myself, but it was that year, it was my 10th year, that's when I really, really began to know God. I saw my father pray. My father
Mm-hmm.
prayed over my sister and I. But that year was a tumultuous year for me. It was a horrible year in my upbringing and, growing up.
Why was it
A
so
lot of
horrible?
change. I was different. Um, my father and mother raised me to be different. My family, the things that they poured in me were direct opposite to the kids in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, the way we spoke, the way we acted, the way we carried ourselves, just a simple sense of walking outside to play,
Mm-hmm.
we were different. The words that we were allowed to say and weren't allowed to say, from ain't to any number, no cussing in my house.
So in your daily life, when do
Hmm.
you feel God's presence?
When I'm still in quiet, when I
Mm-hmm.
walk out amongst the forest that I live, um, I'll say within, um, I'm surrounded by, a forest of trees. And,
Mm-hmm.
when I walk out, it doesn't matter if it's 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, when everything is still, to just being still in my own personal space.
Right.
I found that you have to be quiet to listen. All my experiences with God, be it on a beach in a 40-mile-per-hour wind or running up and down a football field, God was, presence was there.
Right.
And the reason I brought up my 10th year of being a young man on this planet, I had to pray. I
Mm-hmm.
saw my father pray, but I didn't feel my heavenly father, my earthly father at that point couldn't do the same thing. I needed deliverance in a sense. People didn't like who I was, and they let me know in no uncertain terms. So, I prayed.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, in a young man's life, there's things that you like, that you love, that you hate, but that was palpable because I don't want to say power, but I saw how he moved. I prayed a fervent, heartfelt prayer, and he moved in a way far beyond what I thought I asked for. I had to change
Mm-hmm.
schools.
Mm-hmm.
I had to embrace a different lifestyle, different vision.
Mm-hmm.
I moved from the neighborhood a couple years later, but it changed the trajectory of my life in immeasurable ways. The friends I had, the experiences I had, watching my father interact in a world where he was different. He was a military man, an officer. He had a certain bearing. His intellect was immeasurable.
Right.
When he was, in his peers, in his professional peers, well respected. When he was among his men, well respected, revered in some senses. As a father, he's still a mystery to me. So,
Yeah.
um, I that year I knew that God was powerful enough, and at my answer where I could reach out, touch him, and he touched me, and he'd have his hand through the rest of my life. And that's what I told my grandson. I said, look, you have to be deliberate and intentional about greeting people, deliberate about praying for folks, praying for yourself, praying for
Mm-hmm.
others.
Mm-hmm.
I may not be here. There are times when the things that I tell you will manifest themselves, excuse me for that, will manifest themselves in a time and a place that you will need the most.
Mm-hmm.
And it started then. but that relationship, 10 years old, no ifs, ands, buts.
So I was thinking about this conversation that I want to have. And, when you look at your grandson, you're looking at a young boy who is Black, who is going to grow up to be a Black man in this world and a father if he chooses to be, and successful. And maybe because my father passed away at a young age, and my father was 50 when he passed. His brother was 48 when he passed. And
Dad was 47.
Your dad was 47. Yeah. So I have had this thing about Black men and wanting them to live. And there was a friend in Virginia. We would go to Virginia to my grandmother's every summer growing up, and across the street. In fact, my brother, Jeff, his first wife, lived directly across the street from my grandmother. Known her my entire life. Next door to her was another family, and they had a daughter my age, and we used to play. And then she had a brother that was like a year or two older, a couple years older, and his name was Rocky. And just the nicest person, always just a positive, upbeat spirit. And I remember when he passed away, and he was in his 40s when he passed away. And I remember I was just so mad. Now, it's not like I kept in touch with him or anything like that, but your childhood, the people become a part of you and your fabric. And I just remember I was so mad, and I was just like, why don't Black men take care of themselves? And, they have to eat better, and they have to just take care of themselves, and they have to live. And that's been my thing. And my brothers, they each passed away too young. Jeff was 55. Russ was 64. He passed away this year.
So sorry.
Thank you. And so now that we're in these pandemic times, and all of us, it feels like, many of us, it feels like, have experienced multiple people passing away within the last 2 years. And it's scary. And it's been men and women in all ages. But one thing that I'm seeing is men, and in my sphere, I've seen Black men in their 60s. Now, I have a cousin who was 43, and he passed away unexpectedly. It'll be a year next month. So what sparked this for me was a friend got in touch with me, sent me a note yesterday, and he's doing good, and he's in his 60s. But when I asked him how he was doing, he said something to the effect of he's grateful that he's doing well as far as he knows. It was something to that effect. And I was feeling him because I understand we are seeing people pass away. And also, I see sadness in some people, that I know the struggles that my brothers had. And so I wanted to talk to you and get your perspective on what a man might be feeling in his 60s right now, which I feel if you're in your 60s, and I said this to my brother on Thanksgiving, you have your whole life ahead of you. Not whole life. I didn't say that. I said you have years ahead of you. You can live your life. You can travel. You can enjoy life now, because he had just retired. And so I see it as, heck, easily you can live to your 80s, but we know people live into their 90s. And as you said, your grandfather lived to 107. So what do you see? You talked to me a little bit about it yesterday, about some of the things men might be feeling. And you mentioned hope, a lack of hope. So talk to me. I went on for a minute.
What I said during our conversation was, and I used the term no hope. And the only reason I use that term, because I feel I'm a blessed man. I can look around. My grandfather, blessed man. My father, blessed man. But did he sense the accomplishment, or did he sense the blessings that were upon him? We are physical beings, and sometimes that shell of the covering of that spirit can sometimes
Yeah.
restrain the spirit as men. And I'm going to quantify or qualify this statement by saying Black men right now, today in this society, don't remember that we were born kings. We are born of a land of richness. We are born of a land of spirit. We are born of a land of abundance. But a lot of that is stripped. And there is a smoldering soul
Mm.
of that is wanting to burst free, that wants to sing, that wants to, embrace all that is around us from a deeply soulful spiritual place.
Mm-hmm.
So many of us walk day after day, step after step in this lifetime, and we don't see or we don't aren't blessed enough to connect to where we were born from. Now, it doesn't matter as a man, it doesn't matter if you're white, black, red, brown, turquoise. On this planet, what we're born into is almost, in a sense, a shell. We aren't always allowed to let our spirits run free. And it's a very powerful thing when you get that opportunity. And it's an undeniable experience. If a man gets to look on the great plains of the Serengeti, he quickly realizes what he's born to. If you get to, place your feet within the sands of an ancient land and touch those same footsteps where our ancestors walked from, things in your spirit are awakened.
And
So the no hope is the disconnect from that rich, deep, soulful, smoldering,
yeah.
that abundance that's within us, as opposed to being able to live it, see it, express it, every single day.
And that was powerful. And I think that some men had this upbringing of traditional religion. And,
Mm.
the traditional religion puts you in a box where you cannot experience anything near what you just described. I was watching Iyanla 10 years ago. I mean, it was a long time ago, early days of Iyanla Fix My Life. And there was a family, and their dad was, I want to say he was in his 70s, and he was a musician, and he was just mean. And he had quite a few kids. And it really struck me how Iyanla made a little bit of headway with him by the end of the show, but it really struck me how hard it must be to live your life a certain way and then all of a sudden think, I got it wrong. And you're that age. Because I mean, it's hard now. It's hard. Like the journey that I'm on, it's effing hard, even acknowledging the
Mm.
things that I do wrong. So to have blinders on and
Mm.
to have been brought
Come.
up
Yeah.
like, I'm the king. Yeah, you are a king, but I'm a king in this world in a different sense than what you described. I'm the king. I'm in charge of you, woman. What I say goes. And to be restricted about
Let's go. Yeah.
and even when you just said, well, first of all, that's got to be extremely hard. So I have some compassion. I have a lot of compassion around how hard that must be. And then also the body, I was thinking today about the body. I've learned this in my spirituality. It's not my original thought, but I am definitely so clear about it now that the body is simply a tool of communication. The
Mm.
body informs us about what is going on. Because I had a boyfriend and he had a lot of, this was years ago, and he had a lot of pent up rage. And so he worked out a lot all the time. He worked out. That was the way he dealt with his anger, which sounds wonderful. But if you don't deal with the thing that's causing the rage, well, then what the hell, You're only going to get so far. And so,
Mm.
all right.
Preach. No, you hit on five things, and I'm going to try and not try. I'm going to go back to that 10-year-old little boy. That was different. My mother bought me a bike. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And she saved her coins and she said, here we go. She gave the landlord's daughter $10 every 2 weeks. It's 5 payments. It's $50. It's a beautiful bike.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going to her and saying, you know, Ma, I really want this. And my mother would, God rest her soul, she was a nurturing, spiritual, born into a very powerful family. She's the daughter of my 106-year-old grandfather. She gave me this bike. And the reason I bring it up, being different and going through this tumultuous time, my escape was riding.
Mm-hmm.
I could ride as fast, I can ride as far, the sound of the wind past my ears was comfort to me. It allowed my spirit, it allowed my energy, it allowed my joy, it allowed my exasperation of exhausting every bit of sweat and energy out of my body to almost collapse. It allowed me to express and expel that from myself.
Mm-hmm.
Without that bike, I guarantee you I would have rage. And I look at young men today, like I watch my grandson, and this rage is that is pent up within them. It's not that it's, Cat Williams talked about his son, and he does this routine and he says, my son wakes up in the morning, his feet hit the ground, and he just runs
Mm-hmm.
back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And, he doesn't stop. And I related so much to that because, yes, that's what it is. What it smolders within us is so large and is so boundless and is so infinite and is so connected to the universe that we don't even know that that's what we're born to.
Yeah. Yeah.
In high school, the most incredible time of my life. I would not trade these time, the people, the experience, the words, the prayers that I was used as a vessel to say, my teammates or my classmates. The power was that as I ran up and down a football field, that same exuberance, that same sound of the wind past the
Yeah.
ear holes of my
Yeah.
helmet it might fill my spirit, the smell of the grass, just
Mm-hmm.
the unbridled competition, the feel of running faster like a gazelle and leaping, or chasing someone down to tackle them, or the sense of camaraderie with other young men and other young
Yeah.
brothers
Well, there is something spiritual that rises up, to me, that team element and what you're describing. There's two things. There's that physical, where you're getting the rage out, but then there is something that, to me, that rises out of, like, say, a football game. There's things that happen that are like, yes. How did that happen? What was it? The Giants player, Tyree, am I getting his name right? Who the football is sticking to his head, like in the Super Bowl, like Velcro, I mean, there's just stuff that, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm just saying, you're talking and I'm thinking, well, there's spiritual in that, what you're talking about when you start talking about being on the football field. And I know there's rage and you're a warrior on that field, but there is something that rises above. I mean, you have that oneness as a team.
Yeah. Soldiers feel it, but soldiers don't go to war with another country. They're sent to a battle, and you're on a battlefield and you're in the trenches, and it's the person that's on the right and it's the person that's on the left, and it's for your buddies. You were slugging it out in blood, in horror, in abject, just, utter despair, but you're doing it not for the things, the glory, the honor, and all those things. It is, I've never been in battle, nor was my father, who's a military officer. But those that I have spoken to who have that stare, who have that part of them that, I don't know, that innocence that will never be given back of what it's like to be in battle. And when you have to, unfortunately, take someone's life or it's their life or yours, what that does to a person. And the sounds of their voice and the look in their eye and the presence of their spirit in that moment is infinitely removed from the innocence of who they were as a young
Yeah.
man before they entered. As an older man, older men that talk about battle always, to a man, always say, war is not for a human being. It's a horrible experience and it should not be revisited. We fought so that we wouldn't have to fight
Mm-hmm.
future wars. We
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have to expend, or death wouldn't be expended upon and blood wouldn't be spent. So all that to simply say that our innocence that we're born to, we can find again. We can find and circle to and reach out toward and
Right.
open our arms. And we can, on a bended knee, in our stand before a star-filled sky, see and understand that we're born to an infinitely more powerful creator than anything that we can possibly imagine.
And so, in addition to what you said about no hope, when I brought this topic up to you about what some people in their 60s, I'm reluctant to say black men, but that's what I'm talking about. I don't know if white men or Asian men or Latino men are feeling what I'm trying to get at. But when I bring this idea up to you of what black men might be troubled by or what they might be experiencing right now, were you not surprised? Is it something that you think too?
It's threefold. I start again with my grandson. He is, God uses him to check me. Now, my son is my confidant. My
Mm-hmm.
grandson pushes my buttons. He will look and observe and see things through a completely different lens than maybe I had. Our commonality is that we're both black men.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the joy of watching him grow is powerful. Our takeaway is as we walk this walk,
You and your son, you and Christian, or you and your grandson.
all of us, that's the
Yeah.
generational
Yes.
step.
Uh-huh.
Even up to my uncle, we walk a walk to feel and understand the men, the things that men feel, the joy, the hurt, the sorrow. Are we, in some senses, some men, are we even allowed to be men, be the men that we are because of fears from those in the outside world that are, that don't walk in our shoes?
Mm-hmm.
I have been blessed enough from that little 10-year-old self, myself at 10, to talk to men of every color, of every race,
Right.
of almost every inch of this planet.
Right.
And there is one single powerful thing that all men share. It is that both the self preservation, the joy of the love of a woman, and the longevity of seeing that family or seeing your community or seeing your tribe or seeing your world grow, both in the food that is raised from the seeds that you plant to the hunt and you capture and you bring food home to your family, to the building that's built, and even the journey that your family may have to move from place to place so that they can thrive and flourish. As my grandfather would stop and count 300 plus offspring by name, he was blessed to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I've been blessed with a family. Okay. And
A beautiful
able to
family.
see generations now, immeasurably beautiful. And I look back and at every mistake, every trip up, every course that I thought I was on, and I knew what I was doing. It was, my steps were already ordered. All I had to do was fall in line.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to get the kick in the ass. I have to say that, because if you don't have that sense of awakening to see what's real and what's not.
When you
And
say
many
that kick
things that
in the
are
ass, do you mean sometimes you have to fail?
more than just fail. God will kick you in the ass, especially when you're one of his. Our
Mm-hmm.
creator is omnipotent. Okay. You can see it on every corner of this planet. The beauty of a glacier, the power of the winds as they swirl around Mount Everest, to a tidal wave in the Atlantic Ocean. You think of all those that transcended during the Middle Passage to come to this country. The things on this planet, the beauty is immeasurable. A sun's rise, the sense of a warm breeze that's on your face, a rain shower and a thunderstorm that settles you and calms you. Those things are gifts to us, and they are given to our souls to strengthen them, to fortify us, to allow us to be part of all those things around us. But if we aren't able to brace them, if we don't look, because we're so pressured and increase exponentially of that pressure on us, doesn't allow us to see all that's around us, you will get a kick in your behind, because it's
Mm-hmm.
not about the stuff that we see. It's about who we are in this place for the period of time as we walk this planet.
I think another way of saying what you're saying is something that I hear almost daily through someone that I listen to, a spiritual teacher that I listen to, is that what you might be referring to as a kick in the ass. Say if you're walking through this beautiful space that you described, the kick in the ass is the resistance. This is the way this person describes it. As that is the resistance that our human self is feeling, because we know our true selves, that beauty is all that we're about. And so we're in conflict. We have a resistance. We're in conflict. If I want A and I'm doing B, well, I'm in a conflict, and that's not going to make me happy. And then I'm going to start feeling,
True.
a lot of like, oh, I feel like shit today. I don't want to do this. I got to do this. Versus
Men
if I was
have
doing
to
what I
be,
wanted to do,
yeah, men have to be very careful, because there's a spiral that pressure can bring about a self-destructive downward spiral. I call it the abyss. Once you're in it, if you don't realize that it's gotten a hold of you,
Mm-hmm.
you immediately drag down. You
Is that
immediately,
depression that you're saying, or what? What do you mean?
I don't, well, for the general public, you can use that word.
Mm.
I despise that word. I also despise that 5 letter word, uh, stress. I try to eliminate those words from my vocabulary,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want to give anything place
Yeah.
that I've watched people do that downward spiral,
Yeah.
that looked at the abyss, fell into the abyss, couldn't come out, and are gone. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Who
Yes.
couldn't see, who
Yes.
couldn't see that darkness.
Yes.
Um,
Say that again.
when
They
you
couldn't
looking at,
see. They couldn't see the darkness.
they couldn't see the darkness.
You mean
They
at
couldn't,
first? Do you mean at
I,
first, or you mean at all? Like by the time they saw it, it was too
by the
late.
time they knew it was dark,
It was too late.
they were nothing but a shell. So they were gone before they physically departed.
Yes.
I gave it a different term. I call it the blue funk. I gave it that term because George Clinton, is one of my favorites among many artists. But there was a statement that funk can not only move, it can remove. So blue funk is that kind of way of losing the real tapestry of what that music really gives to you, that love, that just
Yes.
that power.
Yes.
And if you're blue and you're disconnected, how can you be disconnected from something? The drum beat of a man's heart, of a woman's heart, of a child's heart, okay,
Yeah.
is universal. People dance, sing, and rejoice this entire planet. They do.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want to lose yourself because of what our physical minds have perceived as difficulty, as inferiority, as being less than.
As
Um,
just being plain unhappy.
yeah, yeah. If there was a dose of joy and a dose of love that you could give, there's a term that you say all the time: God is love, and love is love. And the
Mm.
power of that, when you see and feel the personification of love, an embrace of a grandmother or a mother,
Mm-hmm.
of the rejoicing of a team winning, the hurt of scraping your arm and you seeing the blood rush from the wound and then it being comforted, you know, dressed and healed, and watching your body heal what was a scar, and knowing that you're okay is a process. Everything takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And my joy is that the time that I've lived on this planet, I'm here. I'm seeing, I'm experiencing, I can exhale.
Mm-hmm.
My dismay is looking, and I've looked into many brothers' eyes, white, black, brown, yellow, polka dot, doesn't matter, and seeing that every day a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more gets taken. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're not deliberate about
Yes.
breaking that pattern,
Yes.
doing almost whatever it takes
Yes.
to go in an opposite direction than the direction that slide, you will see the abyss.
Whoa.
And if it hadn't been for my son, uh, you know, uh, and my young little niece, I probably would not be here talking,
You,
because it's not pretty.
mm-mm. You know, I don't know what it is about what kind of knowing I had in me, but I remember in my early 20s saying to my brother who just passed, I'm simplifying it, but I feel this is it gets to exactly what you're saying. I remember saying to him, you get to be happy. I just want
Mm,
you to be happy. And I said it
that too.
to my brother Jeff. I mean, within months before he passed, and like within the year, that he passed. And I used to talk to him about ways to get to happiness, just to try to figure it out. I don't know what would make him happy necessarily, but how about this? How about trying this to make you happy? And he was just like, no. He was probably, no doubt, I'm saying probably, and he died within a year, but was on that path, I believe, that you described. That makes me sad. And but I know it's true, and I really mentioned it to say that there's something in me that has an awareness of what you say. And I used to say, after my mom passed, I just want to get to happy and live for 5 years in happiness, and then I can go. you know, like I just want to get to happy. Like I feel happy, not materially happy. I mean, I do like nice things, but what I'm saying is like, like spiritually, just in that space of joy and abundance and knowledge, that kind of happiness, like just nothing is really affecting me. So I just have an appreciation for what you just brought up. And when my mom was in the months before she passed, she was at my home, and, she was in a hospital bed, and my brothers and
Yes.
their kids were in town, and we would
Hmm.
be, my mom, she wasn't in the bed all the time. Sometimes she'd be, out in the living room with us. But I remember she was in the bed, in the bedroom, and we were all in the living room, and we were playing charades. And it's my brothers and their kids, and we would take turns going to check on my mom. And when I went to check on my mom one time, she said, "You're happy." Because
Mm,
she knew that,
yes.
being with my family was uplifting my spirit. And
Yes.
I couldn't say anything but yes. I didn't want to say yes because look, we're in this situation where you're not going to be with us much longer. But she
Mm,
she meant in that moment, you're happy. And I was.
and are, because in that moment, that unity of a family, that unity of a tribe, that unity of a community rejuvenates you. It doesn't matter where you are, anywhere in the world, you will see groups of people gathering, singing, dancing, and replenishing that within them. It's joy.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Mardi Gras where you celebrate and you are able to, to dance and to utter exhaustion
Mm-hmm.
and still be filled with all those things around you, be it love, be it, laughter. One of the most beautiful sounds that does that for me is this crescendo of sound. It's like you can go anywhere in the world and listen to children playing, and it's the same sound no matter
Yeah.
where you are.
Mm-hmm.
It has the same highs, the same lows, the same sense of joy. It gives you peace. It gives you a sense of, yes, that's why we're here.
Right.
The same when you look in, someone's eyes that you love, that euphoria, the chemicals in your brain and your body just all sync up and it rushes forward. You're consumed by that, what makes your heart and your soul sing,
Mm-hmm.
and those moments we have to grab hold and nurture, or excuse me, and cherish every moment because it's powerful. Brothers on the street would, and I talk about this, when you see each other, the acknowledgement, we just,
Right.
either nod or,
Right.
or stay up or some positive affirmation, and you still see it. It may be less, and the young men today I'm most concerned with, because I don't know if they know that. And part of what that anger is, part of that lashing out,
Right.
part of that destructiveness is steeped in what they are not being nurtured. You know,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
the violence is not the nurture, but it's not just them, it's on the other end too.
Mm-hmm.
Why is the blood being spilled from our babies?
Mm-hmm.
It becomes an insidious sight, but the human spirit can overcome it all.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you've had enough, it's when the hurt gets to be, too much hurt. When you pass the point of being past the point, you've hit the wall, and you cannot ignore what's before both your natural and your spiritual eyes, because your spiritual eyes will make you move in a way. And we've seen it,
Yes.
we've seen it
Yeah.
numerous
And I
times.
think I
So,
think the giving up, I think there's a giving up when there's such a rub between your spiritual and your physical self, and the physical self may not know how to, or can even comprehend, like there's a sense of there's this other side of me, but they don't even know how to get to that other side. It's like
mm,
they're in nursery school, not even kindergarten, and so they give up. This is my thought, that there's a giving up. That's when you're in that dark, you're in that point in the abyss. What for? What's the use? I've lived my life. That's
or
and
some,
and and my
or
my
some would
will is
say,
like, no, no, no. you know?
yeah. When you touched on happy, do people today even know what true happiness is? With joy, with pleasure, with absolute elation, euphoria. What are those things? Coming up, we would listen to music, and that music would make our hearts sing. It didn't matter if we're walking down the street, on a bus, at home, on the porch, we would hear music that would just uplift us. We'd hear songs of love and songs of hope, songs of disgust with things going on that are timeless, timeless traditions that somehow have escaped more and more the masses because there's a disconnect, and it sends you on that path.
Mm-hmm.
It wraps you up in disgust. It wraps you up in hopelessness. It wraps you up in lashing out when you don't even have an idea as to why you're lashing out. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's real. I was going to ask you if you want to share some enlightenment about this if you know just about what a man feels physically as he gets older in terms of virility. Um, what
the
I mean, I know.
I laugh because it's the great surprise. Oh my gosh. First, and this is one of my biggest pet peeves. Okay. Not that they didn't know, not that maybe they weren't aware. And we are surrounded by so much information now. It's nauseating. When you're young men, they don't tell you that all this power that I can take on the world and I can run for days, I can hit a wall, I can just feel my heart pumping, I feel my muscles just pulsating, just all that primal, you can feel it. No one says, oh yeah, by the way, here are the things that will happen as you get older. Look out for 17, because 17, 18, oh man, you know that's your peak.
Mm-hmm.
By the time you transition and you go through, and let's just say you've gone to college, you got married at 25, had a couple kids, by the time you hit 30, hello, your mind begins to play, and I call it not tricks, but sometimes you go from hot to cold in 4 seconds. Your irritability goes up.
Sounds like
Someone says by
menopause.
the time,
Sounds like they're having
mm,
perimenopause.
yes. And why is it that, okay, hold on, we actually, am I losing it here? Kids want attention. Wife wants you to, you're sitting out in the backyard behind the dog because get away from me and you and that thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, what? Whoa, hold on. What? You've gone through all this stuff and, you're supposed to live this cliched kind of life, but no, hold on. The food you eat, the exercise, the amount of sleep, your mental positive state has direct impact on what goes on between your ears, in your heart, in your body.
Yeah.
If you're drinking coffee to wake up, that's not it. If you don't take time to be still and quiet and replenish yourself, your mind, you can't function.
Right.
And soon, when you have kids, you go through that period of sleeplessness,
Mm-hmm.
sleep exhaustion, trying to care for them. And, you can't even think straight. And then you're going to walk into a place where you got to do this job, you got to make some money. And they're looking at you going, well, your performance is off,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
did you have kids? When you get married, the upper management looks at you and says, hey, oh, we got them now. What do you
Mm-hmm.
mean you got them? Just because,
Mm-hmm.
you might have, married the most beautiful woman in the world. Time out. She's going to change. She's going to change, which is impacting how you're changing. Don't think it's always going to be like, oh, hey, back in the day. And it changes and it impacts you. So by the time you get to 50 or 60, oh, man, so much has changed in you. That testosterone that pulsated through your veins as a young cat is there. You still got that heart of a lion, but does everything work? Does sleep impact my ability to feel all the things that I feel? Is it diminished? Oh my gosh, yes. Can you walk out and feel still like you're Superman? Yeah, there are days, and there's other days you're like, oh, the hell with it. It's a different bag. But nobody, not one conversation did I have with, from my grandfather all the way down to my father and my uncle, except, my uncle talked about the abyss as well in a more uh, devastating way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Testosterone is the thing that makes women love us. It's also the thing that in some cases makes you hate us. Once it goes away, it changes us.
To what? Give me a description.
It is one of those. It's one of those pathways that leads toward that downward spiral. You don't know that your happiness, that euphoria that you feel, um, is directly related to this chemical, right?
You're right. The
You
man,
know,
speaking from the man's perspective.
oh my gosh, when
Yeah.
you sometimes almost have to play tricks on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You get dressed, to present yourself to the world. Grandson looks at me and says, Papa, well, why do you do that? I said, my father said you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So I am walking out of this house as the patriarch of my family to present myself to the world. So I am dressed, I am groomed, and I greet people with a deliberate sense of positive affirmation, even if I'm feeling like a piece of shit. Okay,
But
because my body has changed, or there's an ache there, or you know, maybe my wife said, "Get away from me." If you're a man and you love women, then when it changes, you kind of go, "Damn, what the hell happened?"
what's
Or
changing for men, it can be like the desire goes away, or is it that they don't feel sexual anymore
well,
or as much?
I will say, I'll say it this way: the desire, as far as I know, and please don't take this one away from me, okay?
Yeah.
The desire is always there, okay?
Yeah.
And fortunately, in the last year, I got a blessing that I didn't understand. I got to feel the heartbeat of what it felt like when I was 15 years old. It was the most incredible experience because I got to be around in close proximity to folks that are very close to me, that mean something to me. You're one of those people. The kids I grew up to in my neighborhood were there. And I got to exhale. I
Yeah.
never thought I'd feel this feeling. I
It's
never
like
thought I
exhilarating.
got to hear it.
Yeah.
It was locked in me. There's lots of stuff.
Yes.
That's another thing. We lock things inside of us. So when you feel those things and you're able to link the young man to the old man, and you're able to feel things, yes, your sexuality is over the top. But if you are in that downward, you get frustrated and frustrated. Does stuff work the same way? Well, hey, doc, and you're taking pills. Well, pills don't forget pills.
But
You
again,
know,
we go into the bodily, that's the body and not it's the functioning of the body and
mind and
not
the
the
spirit.
spirit, not the spirit.
Most people, and I'm just gonna say this: my father never had this conversation. My uncles didn't have this conversation. Nobody had this conversation except the one we own. And now I'm going to talk about me. Pleasure is something that you learn over time. What pleasures you, what pleasures other people. Love, in its context, has so many different facets. And if you're open to all the facets, you will learn over time. It changes you. The desire is, for me, always there. Why? Because as that young boy, I
Mm-hmm.
always liked girls. I was surrounded by beautiful women. My grandmother, my mother, my aunt, my cousin, drop dead, beautiful, gorgeous women. So, of course, that's going to be before my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I am out in the world as a young man, I'm patterning what I am surrounded by to those people that I draw close to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We have no idea that testosterone makes us so crazy and it pulsates so strong that we get confused. We are for lack of a better term, ravenously greedy because
Oh yeah.
if you're an alpha male,
Mm-hmm.
it comes to you. You don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
You enjoy it, but you don't. really know what it is
Mm-hmm.
that you're giving up at that time.
You
Okay.
don't, wait. What are you giving up?
You're giving up a part of you because you not study what truly it
Uh-huh.
means to be pleasured,
Yeah.
because the pleasure is cyclically you're giving, but you're also it's being given back to you. So you're not just draining yourself running from, as my grandfather would say, pod to pod,
Mm-hmm.
or flower to flower.
Mm-hmm.
You you are expecting and chasing, and some women will say, well, you're thinking with that third head.
Mm-hmm.
It's you have to evolve into that.
Right.
And most men in this society get bombarded by imagery that is so far away from what real pleasure is, and what real love is, and what real satisfaction and spiritual
Yeah.
fulfillment, that something gets taken away every time.
Yeah.
Even if it's self-satisfaction, if it's those things and I go back to music, because music gives you that drive. Sometimes it gives you that just soulful feeling. It
Mm-hmm.
allows you, especially if you're dancing with someone, you dance close to someone and you just feel, that's joy.
Mm-hmm.
So joy, pleasure, satisfaction, all those things are all rolled up in you.
Right.
And yes, those chemicals kick in. You don't want to lose that. For me, I fight. I fight every single day,
Mm-hmm.
to find something that gives me joy. It's something that gives me pleasure.
Yeah.
Knowing that young you is still alive in
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Uh, can I live to 106? Will I live? I'm on that program to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So what are those things? And sometimes, I don't want to say cheat, you look at the gamut of all those things and you take a little bit and you kind of roll them up
Yeah.
to give you the full sense. So,
Yeah. I think that women, I suspect, I haven't had this conversation with anyone, but just thinking about myself, I think women can go through that because maybe about 2 years ago, it was before the pandemic actually. So it must have been like 2020 before we went into lockdown or something. I remember feeling, or maybe like right before Christmas 2019, I remember feeling that I didn't feel sexual. I didn't feel like I was, when I say that, I mean like attractive. I was like, I feel like bland. I don't feel like anybody's feeling any magnetism, from me. And I mentioned it to Tanya, my best friend, who
wow.
and she was like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know what you're talking about, And I said, I was really, really very certain of it. And I was going to meet somebody, and I have a playlist of Besame Mucho, of, different
Mm-hmm.
versions of it. And that makes me feel very sexy. And so I put that on and I started feeling some things just in my spirit. I feel like right now, in my life, I feel like I have that energy, that magnetism, that sexual. When I say sexual, you understand the context that I mean it in.
Charisma, mojo. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, mojo. Like I feel like
That,
I feel like I
oh,
have that. Like I see you watching me. Like I've always been aware. I may keep a straight face, but
yeah.
and this
Yeah.
doesn't have to be with
The
any
eyes in the
any
back of your
looks or
head.
anything like
Yeah.
that. I'm just saying that when somebody's looking at me, it has to be with being black, being a woman, and attractive. So you're just used to people looking at you and having whatever kind of thoughts they might decide to have. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that to say that now I feel like I have that back. And maybe that's because my spirit is evolving in different ways. It's becoming higher and higher. I'm only saying this to say that I think, just thinking about myself, that women probably go through that too.
Well, I'm going to ask you two questions because now I'm fascinated by something. One, knowing you for as long as I have, I would have never contemplated that mentally in my head, that you were experiencing that kind of loss.
It was an
Because
awareness. But it is a loss. But
Okay.
it wasn't a win. It was like, yeah, I'm not feeling this. I think for me, it came about from being alone through all of 2020, just being me, and then into 2021 and just becoming comfortable with that in a sense, like sad and comfortable at the same time. Sad and safe. When I say comfortable, I mean safe. Sad, but safe.
You are an outside person. You enjoy that connection with being outside, although you love your inner space. Be it water, be it
Mm-hmm.
food, be it music, be it work, be it
Mm-hmm.
reading, be it rest, be it older movies that take you to another time and place. You're a very multifaceted, spiritual, intentional person because you never just take things for face value. Your experiences, the sum total of the experiences of your life are both a guide and in some cases, I don't want to say an anchor, but they put you in a place where it's, man, will I ever? And the thing I'm most proud about you is you overcome being your friend and being as close to you as I am. I always wonder and worry, just okay, how do you spend that amount of time? You know, I remember watching my mother who used to just sit at the kitchen table and she'd either drink coffee or drink some wine, but her sum total of experiences were wrapped up in being a wife, being a mother, being a daughter, being an aunt,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, some work, some college, but did she desire more? My grandmother, on the other hand, my father's mother, was determined with absolute intestinal fortitude, the drive of, 100, horses. She was determined not to be minimalized
Mm-hmm.
with a extra dose of just absolute bitterness for those who minimalized her based upon the color of her skin.
Mm-hmm.
And she fought so hard to the point where by the time she was 70 years old, the accomplishment was, I did it in spite of,
Right.
but what could I truly have been?
Right.
The bitterness had somewhat come away, but still, you robbed me of something. You took something from me because I'm greater than what you said I was. I always see that in you. I joke sometimes, that I'm fascinated to see things through other people's eyes. And, I have to thank you because some of the things that you shared with me allow me to see through a much broader lens. My going back to that question about virility, my sense of curiosity has not waned. If anything, it's exponentially grown.
Mm-hmm.
So within that, and the mind is a very powerful organ tool, because the brain is very, very aware of
Mm-hmm.
that sharing between two individuals. But how many facets are there? There are limitless facets if you're willing and open to explore them.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Uh,
Yep.
you know, Men don't create places in themselves. They bury them. They lock them away.
Mm.
They put them in a shelf. Why? Because we have to suck it up, be strong. Men don't do that. Men don't cry. All this kind of stuff. And you lock stuff away. And by the time you realize that it's locked away, it might be too late. You might not
Right.
get the chance to
Exactly.
reconcile.
Exactly.
And many times God might have given you the woman of your life, right? And your mind, your actions, your path, walk right out. You threw her away in the trash. And there's many women out there walking around who are hurt and
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be. Not our sisters, not our glorious
Right.
queens that,
Right. Right. Right.
it shouldn't be that way. So, I am I preaching? Yeah. Why? In this one, to the day I die, I will always love women. because it is a truly a spiritual gift.
Right.
So whatever's in me to give to present myself, my
Mm-hmm.
family, that is the light. You gotta, you gotta work at it, but just don't give it away. Just don't let it slip away through your fingers when
Right.
like sand in an hourglass or sign in a bead slipping through your fingers. Don't let it slip away.
Yeah.
Have that desire, have
Yeah.
that passion for
Unless
something and all things.
I know there was a man, his name was Rick. He was a member of the spiritual discussion group of my Course in Miracles group that I would go to on Sundays before the pandemic. And he passed away a few years ago. But he
Sorry.
was, I thought about him earlier in this conversation because he looked like somebody that would not like Black people. Like I totally misjudged him when I first met him. Okay. Completely misjudged the man. And I'm going to a spiritual place to talk about God, and I see this man, and I think he might be a racist. I was completely wrong. And so he would like transcend. He'd say all these, oh my God, the man would go into another space when he would talk. And he got back together with his ex-wife, and they were planning, he used to ride a motorcycle, and they were planning to hook up like some kind of trailer to the back of their motorcycles, and not a heavy trailer, obviously, and just like travel the country. But I remember before he got back with her, he used to say he was ready to go. And it wasn't from a depressed place, that he was saying it. He was saying it from I want to go on to that better place point of view. But it would make me cry because I loved him so much. I would say, I don't want you to go, but I love you. But the man was so wise. He used to just, like a veil would come over him when he would start talking spiritually.
People.
Yeah. I have two things I want to bring up before we close. And one is tell everyone how long you've been married to your wife, Debbie.
I've been, wow. And thinking about all the things.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be who I am if I hadn't met her. Fast forward to my coming down here. I prayed, and men get to a point, and they may not admit it, but sometimes men get lonely. We do. And I was early on, and I was down here, and my confidence, I was an overly confident, overly achieving, egotistical, and bordering on arrogant and cocky young man, because that was the embodiment, my attitude, my presence was there 50 miles before I did. And my confidence took a beating when I first got here, because none of that was familiar was there. It had, like, everything had been turned upside down, and I'm trying to make it. I'm like on a mission.
When you came to Atlanta from Buffalo.
Yeah. And I was just, I came down with a couple friends from Buffalo.
And Debbie is from New York City.
Yes. And I know we got time, so I'm making this story too long. I prayed and asked, and I remember, saying this prayer, and a week later she showed up. We worked at the same store, Saks Avenue, and I saw her walking across the parking lot, and I was like, I'd seen her before. She'd give me a ride, but it didn't click this way. So as I watched her walk across the parking lot, I went, oh, who's that? Mind you, I had sat in a car next to her because she was nice enough to have given me a ride, because I was walking home to my apartment, which was 5 miles away. Didn't see any of this, didn't pay any attention. That day I paid it attention. So I walked up, said my best hello, my ego a whole bit, hello. She shot me down, get out of here with the best New York. And I said, oh, in my mind, you must not know who I am. And set about doing some work. I told her girlfriend, hey, look, invite her
Mm-hmm.
to this thing that I was emceeing, Miss Black American Atlanta pageant. I said, don't tell her I'm there. She said, why? I said, just don't tell her. Just make sure she's there. Set it all up. He was there. And the performance was horrible, but that set the stage for my being able to sit and talk and
Yeah.
convey. And that's when I began to see she mimicked things in my mother. She mimicked things in my cousin Joanne. She definitely mimicked things in Joanne's mother. And she had a grandmother. I could tell because of little tiny
Mm-hmm.
mannerisms. You could tell she was weird. She could tell that she came from a deep family. I said, oh, okay, this is somebody I can take home to my mother. And 36 years later of marriage, coming up August 30th, will be 36 years.
Oh, in just a
But
minute.
we've been,
I should know that
yeah,
date.
we've been together. We've been together 41 years.
That's what I wanted to say. I wanted to say 40 years. But
Yeah,
something I
41.
also want to note is just how, you have two beautiful daughters and a beautiful son in addition to your grandson, and you all move like a clan. That's so beautiful to see that you guys really enjoy each other. You all enjoy spending time with each other. It's not like if you're going to have a celebration, it's no, my parents have to come. That's the impression that I get. That's what I feel I witnessed.
And I'll say this, and the reason I brought up that whole point about kicking an ass,
Mm-hmm.
because God showed me it was 1996 clearly. He says, okay, you can continue on your path, and he showed me in very specific detail all the things that he blessed me with. I said, well, how's your path working out for you? Obviously not well. I didn't want another man raising my kids. It was a tough time. Those first 10 years, I
Yeah.
don't care. I tell young guys, look out for years 7, 10, and 13. But I was deliberate about my family being the number one thing. The absolute greatest, best decision that I made, getting out of my own damn way and embracing what was given to me. He gave me so much more
That's
way past that and
beautiful.
blessings.
That's
So,
beautiful.
Yeah.
That's
So
almost, I almost want to end there, but I have to see how you respond to this. I had this kind of a revelation this morning, and I sent a text to my girlfriend, and she said, and she's in the middle of a move. She's moving to Texas. Like the movers came yesterday, and she's, like she's packing up the extra stuff. And so I was like, when you take your figurative cigarette break, let me know your thoughts on this. And she was like, girl, that's a wine conversation. Like she didn't even respond to what I'm about to share to see what your thoughts are. So, well, first of all, there's a thought, and I'm saying this, most people don't believe this. I don't think you believe this, but I have come to believe this, that we say that God created this world. There is an idea that we created this world and that God allowed us to create this world because he loves us so much that, we have free will. We can do what we want, so there's an idea that we created this world and that this world is an illusion. It's not even real. And that anything that is real does not end. So like the spirit in us, when we lose this form and when what we call death happens, we still exist, but our spirit continues on. Okay, so that little piece isn't controversial. So I was listening to someone who was basically, I pushed this person's name so much. It's a woman named Esther Hicks. I listen to her because what she's saying, love is love, whatever label you want to put on it, right? So basically she's saying,
preach, Adrian.
Similar, she's preaching similar concepts. The word she uses is a vortex. And when I talk about energy, she says vortex, and her concept is that you have to feel what you want to experience. Whatever you want to manifest in your life, you have to feel that, what that experience is. You have to feel that emotion, because that has to come. Doesn't make sense. These are her words. It doesn't make sense, but that has to come before the thing comes. Okay. So I've been practicing that in terms of my state of mind. Right. So this is what I wrote. I said, this is what I wrote to my girlfriend this morning in a text. I said, I think I'm having a revelation, ? Listening to Abraham Hicks, because Abraham, her name is Esther, but she channels spirits that she calls Abraham. Okay. Whether it's not female, it's not male, she names it Abraham. Listening to Abraham Hicks talking about what's in the vortex. This is what she says, is already done. And what we experience in physical reality is a manifestation of our energy, our frequency. Okay? Listening to her say that, so I'm thinking about how when we see stars, they've already died. Which really, I know a lot of people know this, but I really just learned this, that the stars are like, the stars in the sky, they died like light years ago. So we are really seeing the stars past life, right? If what the scientists say are true, or astronomy people. So we are really seeing the stars past life. And I guess I'm getting to how this is all another reason that this human world is an illusion, and another way of looking at the idea that we made all this up. So that's really it. I said, I'm still processing, but so it's already done, like it's already done. And really in the Catholic religion, I can't even believe I can't remember the words, but it's like, God has always been here. He's always been here. He'll always be here, and he'll be here forever. I'm not saying it right, but that's the whole point. It's already done. It's already done. So
that piece that you opened up, that could be another podcast in itself.
Yeah. But some of it resonated.
That 10-year-old boy used to look at the stars and imagine things that to this day I still really can't put into words. I'd see things in my mind. I was awoken in the middle of the night by things that I don't know how to describe. As a young man, I would, in my search, in my adventure, the things that I would see that got placed before me were wonders far, far, far away from where I was. Those would be like in the desert sands, because I was always fascinated by the sands of time. I was always fascinated by how things were created. People like, and I'll name some scientists like Tesla and Newton and Michelangelo and Socrates and people of that nature, who would look at things and were inspired by things of a celestial nature. The things that we see before our eyes and we experience, many of them have been here. Many of them, we don't understand just how many dimensions. I have been blessed with friends, inclusive of yourself, who who have over many decades taught me things that are just pure blessings. And I know that they're blessings because the parallels that are given to me by others and how they sync up and when they sync up and in what manner are otherworldly. God then will show you things. He showed me once stars in the sky. There were dots of every blessing that he'd ever given me. But then it fast forwarded to light in the prismatic. We don't know and understand all the things in light and what light is. God said he was love, He said he was light. So if you're light and you're all encompassing, and light makes things grow, and light penetrates the darkness, and light,
Yes.
you know, is energy, and it's a multitude of things, some of which we can't even verbalize. Many of the
Right.
things, the visions that he put before my eyes, I couldn't begin to tell you and put them in place. The power of what we are and what we're given and how they present themselves,
Yeah.
the things that you see, um, the experiences one-on-one with God, the experiences standing in a forest full of trees, the experiences standing when you're putting your hands in soil as something begins to grow that will nourish you and that will sustain you and your family over time. Um, it's a newfound affirmation of things that have been planted in you well before you arrived on this planet, and infinitely your spirit that will pass on because the ancestors speak to you, guide you, stop you in some cases from going off in a direction that is not meant for you to go. So in that sense, yes, I embrace what you're saying. Scientists have mapped certain things, and that fascination and curiosity as a child has never left me. And I trust that it never will.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by my friends. I'm fascinated by their gifts. So I hope in short, I've touched on some things. I have a very distinct feeling there will be others.
I hope so. Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. This was foreseen. I will say that. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Remember, you can listen to all of our episodes on traditional podcast platforms. Please subscribe to the podcast and let me know what you thought of this episode. You can reach me on social media or through email at letstarthealingpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, let's start healing.